All right, thank you for your attendance this afternoon, everyone. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If I could ask everyone, please, to make sure your microphone is on mute. There's a fair few attendees at this session, and I know some of you are in an office environment or perhaps at home where you might have a friendly dog or child running around, and some of the background noises can be a little bit distracting. Just for everyone's information as well, we are recording this meeting. We'll be putting the recordings up onto the website. So if you do happen to want to re-watch this session, then you'll be able to jump up there and download it and have a look. The last piece of housekeeping is there is a chat function that's operational during the meeting. Please feel free at any time during the meeting to pop questions in there. And at the end of the presentation, we'll loop back to that and I'll respond to as many questions as what I can. I think that's all for the housekeeping pieces. Before I start the presentation, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. As I said, thank you very much for your attendance at today's session. We're going to be going through some of the proposed changes to the development assessment panels, which are also referred to as DAPs, and I probably will use a few acronyms today. Planners love a good acronym. I'll try and explain what I mean when I'm referring to the acronyms, just in case there's some people who don't necessarily follow all of the acronyms that we use. One other thing too, if any of you are having a little bit of trouble with the connection, it can help if you turn your video off. That can help the sound a bit. So I don't mind if you have your videos on or off, but just if you are having a little bit of trouble with the connection, that can be helpful. So the slide on the screen today actually shows you what we're going to be talking about, an overview of the DAP reforms, and I'll be discussing some of the changes or the proposed changes to the Planning and Development Assessment Panel regulations. For ease of reference, I'll be referring to those as the DAP regulations. You'll get some information on the consultation period and how you can have your say. And at the end, as I said, we'll respond to any questions that are in the chat function, so please feel free to pop the questions in there as we go along. The DAP reforms actually go back to the Action Plan for Planning Reform, which was released in 2019. The Action Plan had 3 fundamental goals, which you can see on the screen. There were 19 initiatives that sat underneath those goals in order to deliver them, and 2 of those initiatives focused specifically on reforms to improve the DAP system. For those of you that are interested in referring back to the action plan, they are initiatives C7 and C8, are mainly about streamlining and process improvements. Some DAP reforms have occurred, or DAP improvements have occurred. In April of 2020, the number of panels was reduced from 9 down to 5, and there were a number of process and administrative improvements that have occurred over probably the last 18 months. Some of those may not be as obvious to the casual person that interacts with the system. For those of you that use the system on a more regular basis, you'll probably be more across some of the administrative changes that have been made along the way. One of the observations that we have actually noticed is the decisions of development assessment panels are actually less and less being referred to the State Administrative Tribunal, and one of the outcomes or one of the factors in that is the quality of the reporting has significantly improved. There has been quite a bit of effort put into ensuring the responsible authority report structures and the matters that it addresses is clear, so those people who are undertaking the assessments and writing the reports are clear about the types of things that are required to be addressed in the assessment. In 2020, the Planning and Development Amendment Act provided the opportunity for further DAP reforms through the introduction of a special matters DAP and also the ability or a change to DAPs, which are currently called joint and local DAPs, to become district DAPs. So we'll just move on to the next slide. In the second half of last year, the Minister for Planning announced a consultation period on phase 2 of planning reform. The Minister, this was headed by the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister, and the Parliamentary Secretary travelled the length and breadth of the state to hear people's views on other proposals regarding planning reform, whether there were opportunities to reduce unnecessary red tape, to reduce the administrative burden on local governments in particular, and also to ensure that there was greater clarity for community members and for applicants and for other people that use the planning system. Some of the feedback that came back did speak specifically to DAPs, particularly around the criteria for membership. There was a lot of feedback on on changes to the thresholds and the appropriateness of having mandatory and opt-in thresholds. There was also a fair bit of feedback that a special matters DAP really should only consider matters that were complex and of state significance. Improvements to transparency and access to information obviously was always a key piece of feedback. And also a request that further consultation and engagement on DAP reforms be undertaken before those things are introduced. So we'll get to the DAP reforms that are proposed currently, and this is what we're currently undertaking consultation on. The proposal is to reduce the number of panels to 3 district DAPs. So the current joint and local development assessment panels, which are 5, will become 3 district DAPs. It is proposed that the presiding members, deputy presiding members and potentially the specialist members will all be full-time employees. So they will be put on a fixed term contract and will become employees of the department rather than become sessional members, which they are currently. The pool will be retained, so there will be the ability to still call people in from a pool to sit on a development assessment panel. That's needed because it will actually help us to cover things like periods of leave or where there's conflicts of interest and one of the full-time members is unable to sit and we can't get another full-time member to fill in that place. So that will ensure that there's continuity of DAP meetings, which is important, and it goes to the certainty and transparency in the system. There is a proposal to create a special matters DAP, and the special matters DAP will be quite different to the 3 district DAPs. It will consider proposals that are complex and that have a state significance or are significant in a regional context. And there are certain criteria that will be established for that. And there are, of course, the necessary process and administrative reforms that will support all of that, but they are also aimed to improve transparency, consistency, and also efficiency and effectiveness of processes. So the district DAP boundaries, you can see that largely on the screen. The Metropolitan Inner DAP will comprise the City of Perth local DAP and the current Metro Inner North and Metro Inner South Joint Development Assessment panels. The Metro Outer DAP essentially comprises the current Metro Outer DAP and the Peel Region Scheme area, so it will include the local governments of Mandurah, Murray and Waroona. And then the regional DAP has very little change to its boundaries. It pretty much is as it currently exists, with the exception of Waroona, which moves from regional into Metro Outer. And that's simply because Waroona is included in the Peel Region Scheme area. So we'll just go on to discussing thresholds, and you can see in that table that's on the screen there, it is proposed that the mandatory thresholds will be removed and that all of the district DAPs will become opt-in with a minimum value of $2 million. So that's quite a significant change in terms of thresholds for DAP decisions. The membership of district DAPs. The permanent specialist members will be employed by the department and they'll be appointed by the minister. So they'll be paid an annual salary, and being a DAP member will be their job. They will not have another job. Some may be employed on a part-time basis or a full-time basis to service all 3 panels. Obviously, the exact numbers of employees is going to depend on the workload that we have. I think our current estimates is that we would actually need 5 full-time members to service the 3 DAPs. It is proposed that the third specialist member on each of the DAPs may be employed on a fixed term basis as for the presiding and deputy presiding member, or that person may be drawn from a pool and paid a sitting fee. Obviously, if they are drawn from a pool and paid a sitting fee, those members are likely to have another job because the odd sitting fee for a DAP is probably not going to be sufficient for an income. And the alternate presiding member and deputy presiding members may also be sourced from the pool if that is required as well. There is no changes to local government membership for district DAPs. So that's no change to the way local governments currently nominate their members and their alternate members or the way those local government members interact with the district DAP. It will be exactly the same way as currently occurs for local DAPs and joint DAPs. The district DAPs will continue to have excluded applications, and essentially excluded applications will be as they currently are under the DAP regulations, and there are a couple of new exclusions that are proposed, and essentially those relate to public works and development that is wholly within reserved land under region planning schemes. The feedback that we have had quite consistently across the last couple of years is there is very limited value in having those proposals be determined by a DAP. The Commission is well set up and perfectly capable of determining those, and there are a lot of efficiencies in process to have those determined by the Commission rather than to have those determined by a DAP. So to go to some of the processes for district DAPs, you will see there that a number of processes are unchanged and will continue. The statutory timeframe for determining applications remains exactly as is, either 60 days or 90 days if it requires advertising. The role of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage continues to be as it is currently in terms of applications. The Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage will have a greater role, expanded role in the administrative side, but not in the technical or assessing side. The local government role for district DAPs remains as is, with the exception of a reduction in the administrative components because they will be coming to the Commission, or to the DAP Secretariat, the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. There are some process changes for DAPs, and as I said, largely for district DAPs, these relate to the administrative side. So the meetings will be hosted by the department in a centralised location. They'll be held at regular times. And essentially that means that the department or the DAP through the DAP Secretariat will provide all of the administrative support. It probably formalises what has been happening a little bit more consistently recently, where since we've had the restrictions around COVID, the department has undertaken a greater role in the administrative processes, and we are aware that there are some significant streamlining in terms of the administration, but also a reduction in administrative burden in local governments with regard to the department undertaking those minutes and agenda processes. The regulations will clarify that councils are able to delegate functions relating to DAPs. So I understand there has been some discussion and perhaps some confusion about whether council can elect to delegate the submission of an RAR to its CEO or to other officers of council. So that will be clarified in the regulations to say that council can certainly do that. And in terms of fees, the administrative fees have been revised to reflect more closely cost recovery for operations. So that includes all of the costs associated with holding, administering and coordinating development assessment panel meetings. With regard to the Special Matters DAP, as I said, the Special Matters DAP is different to the District DAPs and it will function quite differently. The criteria, process and decision making, of course, for that, because it's so different, is all having to be created. The framework will be in the DAP regulations. However, the detail about what goes to a Special Matters DAP will be done through a ministerial order, and that will support the DAP regulations. The use of ministerial orders enables flexibility and also the ability to respond quickly to matters of state or regional significance. Obviously, the drafting of regulation and changes to regulation is a more cumbersome process, and there are times when there's the need to move more quickly and be more agile and responsive is required. For the purposes of consultation, there are a couple of sets of criteria that are being published. One relates to projects of state and regional significance, and the other relates to precincts of state and regional significance. So if the project or the precinct criteria is achieved, then a special matters DAP pathway will be mandatory. So as an applicant, you will not have a choice. If your application or your proposal is considered to be of state or regional significance, it will be determined by the special matters DAP. And here we have some examples of projects of what might be considered appropriate for the special matters DAP. Applications must achieve both the criteria and the value threshold where those are indicated. So, for example, a proposal for more than 100 multiple dwellings that achieves a value of $50 million or more can go to a special matter, or must go to a special matters DAP. If the proposal was for 100 dwellings and it was $45 million, then it does not meet the criteria, so it would not be eligible for a special matters DAP, and that would be determined by a district DAP, or could be determined by a district DAP. State significant proposals under the lead agency framework will be a special matters DAP application. A value is not applicable in those cases because the project has already been determined through a different process to be of state significance. And that's where, so the lead agency framework focuses on providing major projects that are deemed as state significant with additional state government assistance in terms of case management and a coordination of all of the government processes that are needed to deliver that project. So a decision on a project to classify it as state significant has already been made through Cabinet, and there is no need for another decision to be made about it being state significant through this process. So if you have approval under the lead agency, if you have a state significant designation under the lead agency framework, then it is a special matters DAP application. In the planning system, generally those types of projects tend to be tourism oriented, but they can be other types of projects such as major infrastructure projects or renewable energy, some mining proposals if they require planning approval. An example of a project that has been deemed state significant via that process is the Tawari Hot Springs proposal in Dalkeith, and that particular one is an application under Part 17 that's currently in the system under assessment. Resource projects are special matters DAP projects if they're not otherwise exempt from requiring planning approval, and I think the other examples up there are probably quite self-explanatory. In terms of precincts, now this is quite new, so we are hoping that there will be quite a bit of feedback on the criteria around precincts and the types of locations that might be state or regionally significant precincts. My apologies for those of you that might be in regional areas. The precincts that have been put out for public consultation are all metropolitan. That doesn't mean that you can't have a state or regionally significant precinct in a regional area. It's just at the moment none have been identified for the purposes of this piece of consultation. So in a precinct, for that to go to the special matters DAP, the application must be within the precinct and achieve the criteria. So, for example, a proposal in the City of Perth for more than 51 dwellings and 5,000 square metres of commercial development would be eligible. Indicative boundary areas have been established with reference to the local planning framework, and preliminary engagement with those affected local governments has taken place to understand areas of significance or areas of potentially of significance. Indicative mapping of those areas will be available on the website, and a precinct boundary would be clearly established. With regard to MetroNet, many of those precincts are already in a redevelopment area and covered by a redevelopment scheme, so those projects would not be eligible for special matters DAP. The precinct criteria will be established by a ministerial order, as I said, which allows for flexibility and also efficient response to changing areas and matters of state or regional significance. It's most likely that areas that are declared as precincts will be have high development pressure, or they might be areas of other importance to the state. A precinct may be established as a permanent precinct, or it may only be relevant for a certain period of time, perhaps for 5 years or some other identified period of time. The precinct criteria and project type criteria can be changed at any time through a ministerial order process, and that means that new precincts or projects can also be declared in response to matters and places of significance to the state and regions. There are excluded applications for the Special Matters DAP process as well, and as you can see there, they are actually similar to the district DAP exclusion. So essentially, if you're an excluded application, you are excluded from the DAP system. Now, Special Matters DAP membership, again, this is different to district DAPs. Special Matters DAP membership will be on a sessional basis, so Special Matters DAP members will not be permanent employees of government or the department. So a different panel will determine Special Matters DAP applications, and the composition of the panel is shown on the screen. And essentially, key industries, bodies, agencies and stakeholders will nominate a number of people, 4 to 5 people, and the appointment of those people will be made by the Minister for Planning. The Minister from that group of nominees will appoint a member to the Special Matters DAP and a deputy member to the Special Matters DAP. The last dot point, which is other, that other expertise person may have practical knowledge of and experience in one or more of the fields of property economics, commerce and industry, business management, financial management, engineering, surveying, valuation or transport. And obviously the nominator is likely to be a peak industry body, potentially Property Council, Urban Development Institute or a housing industry association or one of those types of bodies. We do need to do a little bit more work on the actual process for the nomination, particularly of that last group of that last member spot, because it's not quite as clear cut as what the other ones are. With regard to the process for Special Matters DAP, a number of the processes have been informed by the processes used to assess applications under Part 17, but there are some key differences. One of the key differences is that a Special Matters DAP process will have a statutory timeframe. Part 17 does not have a statutory timeframe. The statutory timeframe proposed for Special Matters DAPs is 120 days, and that's in recognition of the fact that these are applications or areas that are of state or regional significance and therefore require additional time to ensure that the appropriate assessments are undertaken and all of the matters are covered. Those of you that are familiar with the MRA and redevelopment schemes, you'll be aware that 120 days is the time frame that is used under redevelopment schemes, and having worked in a local government that has had a redevelopment area in it, that certainly does provide the necessary time for local governments to respond in those processes. For Special Matters DAP applications, the department will undertake the role of receiving, processing and assessing applications and coordinating referrals. The department will prepare the responsible authority report for Special Matters DAPs and will also make the recommendation to the Special Matters DAP itself. Local governments will be referred applications within their local government area and they will be asked to provide a comment. They will have 60 days to do this and their comments will be given due regard. However, local governments will become responsible for the clearance of conditions and for ongoing compliance with any approval that's issued by a Special Matters DAP. With regard to the fees for Special Matters DAP, there's a new schedule that's been put into the DAP regulations to cover those fees. So similar to district DAPs, there's an administrative fee that will be paid by Special Matters DAP application, which includes all the administrative costs. And then there's a separate assessment fee that will be paid to the department that will cover the assessment costs. The costs for Special Matters DAP will also include design review, and design review is a key component of the Special Matters DAP process, as is the coordination of state agency referrals. Again, those particular things have been informed by experience with Part 17 and how that works. The establishment of the fees in the Special Matters DAP process has been guided by the costs that have been associated with the Part 17 development applications. So that's where that information has come from. Sorry, I do a lot of talking in this and I do need to take a drink from time to time. The commencement of changes, this is going to be probably a question that will be asked. The commencement will happen as soon as practicable after we complete the consultation and undertake all of the processes that are required in order to gazette regulations. The intention is that the regulations will be published before they become operational, so as people are very clear about exactly what is going to be happening. And at the time that they are published, the date that they will be gazetted will also be published, so you'll be aware ahead of time of what is going to happen when. We will need to include transitional arrangements. We are currently doing some work on what those transitional arrangements need to look like. The transitional arrangement might include a staggered introduction of the Special Matters DAP, and it might also include using the pool to fill the district DAP panels initially if there's a time lapse between us being able to actually employ permanent members for those district DAP positions. So for the next steps, it's about you having your say and providing submissions on the proposals. There's a lot of information available on the website. There's some links on this slide here. Essentially, if you go onto the Department of Planning website and search for DAP reforms, you should actually be taken to the correct page. But just in case, please feel free to copy that link. We can also email that out if you feel that you need to, or you couldn't actually get it down in time. There's a survey online. The Word version of that survey or the questionnaire has been emailed to all local government planning directors through either your direct email address if I've happened to have it, or through your council email address. We would like you, if possible, to use that Word document as the basis for your submission, and you can fill that in and then attach that to your council report if you need to take it to council. For those of you who are not from local government, if you are in an organisation that has a process that you have to go through in order to get approval for your organisation to make a submission, we would ask, please, if you could use that same document. We're happy to provide a Word version of that if you need it. It just helps us when it comes to looking at the submissions and summarising those and understanding what the themes are coming back from feedback. We are also aware that the 22nd of April is likely to cause some issues, particularly for local governments. April having public holidays like Easter and Anzac Day in it does mess around a little bit with council meeting timetables. We are fully aware of that. If the 22nd of April is going to pose a problem for you, please let us know as soon as possible, and please let us know what date you anticipate that you will be able to get a submission to us. We do have a little bit of latitude in terms of that date, but I can tell you now we don't have months of latitude, so please let us know of a date that would suit you better to get that submission in. I know some local governments, in terms of your meeting dates, have pushed the meeting date out till the following week in April, and obviously you need to take submissions through council, so we certainly do understand that. If you have any questions, as I said, I'm more than happy to answer what I can now. If not, there's an email address. So if you think of something later, please feel free to email that through, and we'll certainly respond to it as soon as we can. This is the third of our information sessions, and we have had a couple of questions from the previous session. So what we intend to do is create I'll call it frequently asked questions, but it's basically questions from the information sessions document with answers, and we'll put that up online as well, hopefully by early next week. I won't give Cassie a heart attack and say by tomorrow, but by early next week. So if you can't remember the question, then you can have a look online if you remember what was asked at a session. Okay, so I can see a few questions up there.
So we've got the first one from James.
Okay, are we able to unmute people to? So I'm of an age, we're looking at the screen and reading the question. I don't know whether to put my glasses on.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, thank you. Am I the James?
Well, you've got the floor, so go ahead.
Thank you. Matters of state significance. What's the criteria for that? Can you outline briefly? And particularly, would environmental issues come under that umbrella?
they could. What has been advertised for public consultation at the moment, there's a summary of that on the screen. There is more detail in the documents that are on the website, so I would encourage you to have a look at that. James, I think we actually have your email address, because if I remember correctly, I think you and I met at a Cape Perrin workshop.
We did, and you do, yes.
Yes, okay. So what we'll do, I think, because it's probably a little bit detailed to go into right now,
Sure.
and you'll have to remember a lot of things, Cassie, we might email that through to James, and then he'll have that to refer to. Is that all right with you, James?
Fine, thank you.
Okay.
Ross had a question in terms of whether any fees for referral will go to local government.
That's something we're having, is that Ross Manette?
Yes, correct.
That's something we're having a look at, Ross, at the moment. It's not included in the regulations at the moment, but also the current fee that's paid to local governments to hold meetings, which I'm aware is only $150 or something like that, is also not in the regulations either. So we are having a look at that, and I'll get back to you, can get back to you on that one. Cassie, can you make a note of all these things I'm promising to do as well?
Thanks, Kathy.
Can someone unmute Ross so you can ask the question?
No.
Did you have a second question, Ross?
No, I was just saying, all good, thanks.
So Chloe Johnson's, will the ministerial order for the criteria of the special matters DAP initial or later amendments be advertised?
Yes, it will have to be. It will be a bit much to have a ministerial order for people to do something that no one knows anything about, I would have thought. We certainly can get some more information regarding the process around that, and we'll put that up online as soon as we have that.
Pacey Lang from the town of Mosman Park, is local governments able to onboard any specialist advice back to the DAPs or the applicant?
If you're referring to district DAP applications, then the local government will be preparing the RAR and making the recommendation to a DAP in any case. If you're referring to the special matters DAP applications where the department is undertaking the assessment, the local government will be given 60 days to provide a formal comment through to the department. So yes, you can provide any comment that you like through to the department. Essentially, if I can put it this way, and I hope this is helpful, not confusing, but currently the the DAP process requires an applicant to lodge an application with the local government. The local government then has 7 days to send it to the department, and then the local government goes ahead and does the process, does the assessment and sends the RAR in. Essentially, that will be the reverse. So the applicant will lodge the application with the department, and then the department will essentially give the local government the information within 7 days, which is not the formal referral, that's for your information. Because the other thing we're also aware of is that we need to be careful not to create significant gaps in terms of local government records about what's happening on land within their local government in terms of the planning space. So it's about ensuring local government still has the information, even though it has a different role in special matters DAPs. I hope that was helpful.
Another question from Paul Needham. Has there been any consideration of allowing extractive industry applications to go to the DAPs, probably district DAPs?
Thank you, Paul, and I have received your 2 emails and I will respond to you as soon as I can. I don't think there's been any significant discussion around extractive industry applications, but I'd certainly be very happy to hear feedback on what that might look like and how that might work. So I guess the short answer to that is no specific consideration that I'm aware of, but we'd certainly be happy to look at it if there was a view that that might be helpful. Are there any other questions?
Kate Stevenson from 5/8. Could you just provide just a little bit of clarity for me? I understand that on the special matters DAP for projects, you need to hit the criteria for cost and I guess the criteria on the left-hand side for projects. So for precincts, which was the next slide, I believe. Do you need to hit both criteria as well?
Yes, and be in the precinct.
Yes, so I understand you need to be in the precinct, but you need residential as well as commercial.
Oh, sorry. No, not necessarily, because not every building will obviously be a mixed-use building. And we do need a fair bit of feedback on the precincts as well, because we've never done this by precinct before. So this is, we're happy enough with this criteria to consult on it, but it does need some refining to make sure that we are actually picking up those things that should be picked up, and that other matters that really shouldn't be in a special matters DAP remit, which is those, state and regionally significant proposals. We need to make sure that if they don't hit that criteria, then they're filtered out, because you really don't want the special matters DAP dealing with, I guess, the more day-to-day type matters. There's other processes that can deal with that. These need to be the far more significant things that will have an impact. So please review that criteria quite carefully, and we're very happy to receive feedback on that. We understand that we may not have some of this quite right.
Thank you.
Lee Riddle has a question. Is there the potential to include local government as spectators for pre-application design review undertaken as per the SDAU process?
Look, the advice that local government can give at a technical level, so I'm talking about local government officers who are technical and professional specialists in their fields, is invaluable in terms of design review, and it's certainly greatly appreciated by the State Design Review Panel on the occasions that local government officers attend and provide that technical advice. So I don't see that would change. I am having some current conversations with the government architect about I guess clarifying some of those processes. It's fair to say that we've learnt a lot through Part 17 and the role of the SDRP, State Design Review Panel, in that process. We do need to formalise some of those so that it's a bit more clear to everybody about what the processes going forward are. Certainly something, Lee, we are looking at.
Ross Manette is just seeking some clarity. Can this be clarified as your... Oh, okay. So the criteria, definitely both multiple dwelling and commercial development, or either? He's just seeking clarity.
Okay, Ross, if it's a little bit confusing, what we'll do is we will take this offline. We will have a look at, make sure we give you a response that's consistent with what's actually in the advertised matter, and then get back to you.
Another question from Paul. Is the list of people on the Special Matters DAP, can you please make sure the planner is listed above the architect?
Well, I tried to get the planner listed ahead of the commission, but the chairman overruled me. I think we went for oh no, I thought we went for alphabetical order, but we didn't actually do that. Point taken.
Another question from Lee. Can you please confirm that the Special Matters DAP will not have the power to disregard scheme provisions, e.g. prohibited land uses, as per Part 17?
The Special Matters DAP will operate within the existing planning framework. The Special Matters DAP will not have powers to step outside the planning framework. The Special Matters DAP is not the West Australian Planning Commission operating under Part 17. There is a reason that the planning framework is important, and that is because the planning framework is put in place by the Minister on advice of the Commission, and also there's processes that happen to get to that point. So in effect, the planning framework really is government strategic direction. If you have a decision maker that can operate outside that for any extensive period of time, there are risks to the whole strategic planning process. So the Special Matters DAP will operate within the planning framework. However, you can likely expect that the Special Matters DAP will make discretionary decisions, and they will exercise that discretion in a way that that particular DAP exercises discretion, and that may not be the same as what a district DAP would do, and it may not be the same as what a local government would do. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, I don't want to keep you past what what we need to be. There's no point having meetings for meeting's sake. So if you do think of a question in half an hour's time or whatever, or tomorrow morning or at midnight, please feel free to email the email address planningreform@dplh.wa.gov.au. Please follow those links and look at the material. As I said, particularly for local governments, please have a look at that consultation closing date, and if you require additional time, please let us know as soon as possible and give us an idea of when you can submit your submission or your council's submission. I think that's it. Basically, if you have any questions or you want to get anything clarified, please email and let us know. We can't answer questions that we don't know about. So thank you very much for your attendance. I do appreciate that, and enjoy the rest of your day.